stand-up community subscribers and listeners from around the globe. It's time to Stand Up with Pete Dominic, where we ask the important questions that impact you, your family, and your community. Such as, will there be enough flu vaccine available this season to inoculate all of the picnic-invading birds? And are sea otters actually adorable seagrass tending stewards at the aquarium when they're biting your wife's face off? And now, the podcast host whose house leak plugging ability is matched only by his marijuana green thumb, Pete Dominic.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much, Pete. Yeah, I got the one plant harvested and time to clip and cure, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So if you are a gardener and a grower and have any advice, by all means, stand up with Pete at gmail.com. Hello, my friends, and thank you for joining me today. First time back in the shed, recording the opening of today's episode since last week when I was in Florida with my friends down at the Florida Education Association. Thank you again to them. I'll be joined today by Fed Ingram, who used to run the FEA, but now he's at the AFT. So he went from the leadership of the state education union to the national education union, where he now works with Randy Weingarten. I caught up with him last week, and today I'll share that conversation along with the great Michael Cohen, columnist, author, and commentator, and of course, last but not least, it's Maura Mondays. So Maura Quint joins me for a wonderful conversation. We talked about fall, autumn, which she says is the best time to have sex, and she'll tell you why in that conversation. Also talked politics, economics, and more. As always, a great conversation with Maura Quint. Fed Ingram, Michael Cohen, Maura Quinn all join me on today's episode. Of course, I do have a news segment for you, and I want to have a conversation with you about the news segment. It's weird to sit and talk about the show with a bunch of listeners of the show. Usually at our hangouts, we don't talk so much about the show and the structure of the show because I just am not sure it's the best use of time. But I was talking to Dr. Barry Hummel and Steve Courtney and Benny Alexander about the format of the show. We were talking about the news, and it's just such a wide range of opinions in terms of what people tune in for. But as of now, I'm going to continue to try to give you 3 things to listen to. Today it's 4, because I'm putting 3 guests on the program and the news, and I'm hoping that you, if you want, skip around. But like many of you, you like to start your day with the show. You listen from beginning to end, many of you do. And so however you want to listen to the show, it'd be super helpful for me to know how to host it. So if you haven't given me your feedback on that, then always appreciate it. Stand up with Pete at gmail.com. Put show feedback. How about that? Show feedback in the subject. How do you like the structure of the show? How do you listen to the show? Do you listen to it in higher than normal speed? I almost always listen to podcasts at 1.5, and sometimes, because I'm a sociopath, double speed. I'll listen to the Sunday shows on double speed because I'm insane. Can't really comprehend stuff that well, I don't think, but I get the gist of it. But in a thoughtful conversation like the one I'm hosting, I think that's probably too much, don't you? Anyway, all those questions have answers, and if you have the time and you want to send me an email, I love it. I love reading your emails. Standupwithpete at gmail.com. If you're not supporting the show with a subscription, what on God's green earth are you doing with your money? Go ahead, tell me. So, I listen to the show quite a bit, but I don't yet want to put my money behind the show. I don't believe in you that much, Pete. I don't support you that much. I just want to freeload off of your work. Sign up now. Go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Or just go to standupwithpete.com for everything else. Okay, well, lots to talk with you about. I hope you had a good weekend, another fall weekend. It was crisp and some rain on Saturday here in New York State, where I got a lot of outdoor time in the sun. Took a couple walks. I planted some flowers for the fall. Did some landscaping, some light landscaping, mowed the lawn. Drove the girls around, helped Val out around the house. We didn't do anything. We just hung out. It was pretty quiet, but a lot of time outside for me, and that made me feel great. I hope you had a great fall weekend. What did you do? I'm going to need some vitamin N pictures. I'm going to need a lot of autumn pictures, folks. The leaves are changing. Where are you? Can't be just the same few people, although I love and look at every single email that says vitamin N. I look at that photo. So if you want to mess with me and send me that picture of like a naked guy, that we trick each other with, do you guys do that? You send a link. We're like, oh, you guys got to see this. And it connects to a large naked man. And it's like, you've been duped. We do that. Don't do that to me, please. You're going to do it now. standupwithpete@gmail.com for your vitamin N, not your porn jokes, please. All right. Well, lots to get to in the news. Headlines galore. Time for the last 24. All right. Well, I feel like the words in the zeitgeist are COVID, supply chain, and climate initiatives. And the COVID headlines, let's get to some
COVID news.
Yeah, COVID news. Thanks, Pete. First of all, the White House announced Friday that it's going to lift the COVID-19 travel restrictions to let fully vaccinated international visitors into the United States starting November 8th, folks. That means if you've got friends or relatives that you want to come in before the election to vote fraudulently, you can't do it because the election's before that. The move will end 21 months of unprecedented restrictions that had barred millions of visitors from China, Canada, Mexico, India, Brazil, and much of Europe and elsewhere from entering the U.S. White House spokesman Kevin Munoz said the policy, quote, is guided by public health, stringent and consistent. Many countries had lobbied the Biden administration to ease its travel rules. Sweden's ambassador to the U.S., Karin Olofsdotter, he called the new policy very welcoming news. That is the Washington Post reporting the White House lifting COVID-19 travel restrictions to let anyone who's fully vaccinated into the United States, unless they are Muslim. In that case, they still can't come in. No, that's over too. I kid the Muslims, as Waj refers to his folks. Over 100 million fully vaccinated people could be eligible for coronavirus booster shots by the end of the week. A key FDA advisory panel has concluded a series of votes to recommend boosters for all 3 coronavirus vaccines used in the U.S. Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. The FDA and CDC have already authorized Pfizer boosters for older and at-risk Americans. Moderna and Johnson & Johnson are expected to be authorized next. I am a Moderna man. I took the Moderna juice. So I'm looking forward to getting my booster. Hi, I'm here for my booster. Hi, do you guys do boosters? I need a booster. I'm just rehearsing how I'm going to do it. All right, here's the Fauci. Here's the Fauci on the ABC This Week with the Martha Raddatz with the question that keeps getting asked about holidays. This one is Halloween. The Halloween question, can we trick or treat, celebrate Pete's birthday?
And Dr. Fauci, lastly, we know the best way to keep safe is to be vaccinated. But what are your guidelines for the upcoming holidays? Will you be giving out Halloween candy? What do we do Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the other holidays?
Well, Martha, I believe strongly that, particularly in the vaccinated people, if you're vaccinated and your family members are vaccinated, those who are eligible, and that is obviously very young children are not yet eligible, that you can enjoy the holidays. You can enjoy Halloween, trick-or-treating, and certainly Thanksgiving with your family and Christmas with your families. That's one of the reasons why we emphasize why it's so important to get vaccinated, not only for your own safety, for that of your family, but also for the good of the community to keep the level of infection down. When you do that, there's no reason at all why you can't enjoy the holidays in a family way, the way we've traditionally done it all along.
But what about if you're not vaccinated? Well, those people shouldn't go anywhere or do anything because they'll get sick and die. This Delta variant is no joke. And now Anthony Fauci also visited with Chris Wallace over on Fox News, who asked a tougher question.
When we're talking about essential workers maybe going off the job, like half of a police force, should local officials or should corporate executives back off enforcing these mandates?
Well, Chris, I'm not comfortable with telling people what they should do under normal circumstances. but we are not in normal circumstances right now. Take the police. We know now the statistics. More police officers die of COVID than they do in other causes of death. So it doesn't make any sense to not trying to protect yourself as well as the colleagues that you work with. So I think if we can get people to just think about that, think about the implications of not getting vaccinated when you're in a position where you have a responsible job and you want to protect yourself because you're needed at your job, whether you're a police officer or a pilot or any other of those kinds of occupations.
Finally, when this pandemic started, I think it's fair to say you were generally regarded as the authority on infectious disease. But as time has gone on, you have become a polarizing figure. Critics accuse you of sending mixed messages. There's allegations that you helped fund dangerous research at the Wuhan lab. Two questions. Why do you think you've become so controversial? And honestly, do you think there's anything you have done that has contributed to that?
Well, I'm not so sure I could answer the latter because I can't think of anything, but I'm sure some people will. But, you know, Chris, I have stood for always making science, data, and evidence be what we guide ourselves by. And I think people who feel differently, who have conspiracy theories, who deny reality that's looking them straight in the eye, those are people that don't particularly care for me. And that's understandable because what I do, and I try very hard, is to be guided by the truth. And sometimes the truth becomes inconvenient for some people, so they react against me. That just is what it is. There's not much I can do about that, Chris.
I think those are fair questions that Chris Wallace asked, and I think that Fauci gave good answers. I was actually just thinking when I was listening to him today that he communicates really well for a much older gentleman. I think he's almost 80, and he is extremely articulate. He rarely makes mistakes. Sometimes he gets dates and numbers wrong, but no more than almost anybody else does. I think Dr. Jon Carroll is probably one of the most effective communicators when it comes to science and health issues of anybody I know. And I think Fauci does a great job. I mean, I think everybody makes mistakes, and so I'm used to listening to smart people. I generally think he does a pretty good job communicating important information and answering tough questions. Well, okay, let me move on to something else. This is Jon Stewart. He is making the rounds, doing a bunch of interviews, and he spoke with Jake Tapper on CNN this weekend. I wanted to play this clip for you and then get some reaction and analysis after it from Mehdi Hasan.
I think the media does a terrible job at de-escalation.
Yeah.
And de-escalation is the antidote to all this nonsense. And I don't mean civility and I don't mean nonpartisanship. I mean focusing on things that are more urgent and elemental in people's lives and really hammering away at those things.
Yeah, okay, Jon Stewart. I think that's a fine take. You know, I think Jon Stewart gets put on a pedestal that nobody deserves to be put on in terms of he's the be-all, end-all. He makes so much sense. He's so smart and funny. And this isn't Jealous Pete Dominic talking. I like John. I know John. John hired me and gave me a huge break to be his opening act at The Daily Show, which turned into The Colbert Report. Now, Stephen Colbert, of course, is the be-all, end-all, and he's never wrong. I'm kidding. John Oliver, obviously, is the one. No, there isn't a person. It's Michael Eric Dyson. I felt like those were three white guys, and now I feel like I have to add a very smart black woman in there. The point is, there is nobody who deserves a pedestal that's never wrong, and Jon Stewart gets a lot. And so I thought it was interesting to hear Mehdi Hasan and Ayman Mohyeldin on MSNBC taking a look at that clip.
Ayman, I adore Jon Stewart. I used to worship The Daily Show when he hosted it. But isn't he falling into the trap of referring to the media as if it's a monolith, the media, when he really means right-wing media? I mean, I've spent this year focusing this show on elemental issues, on democracy, on climate, on the economy, COVID. Fox has spent it on critical race theory and Dr. Seuss. Why should I be lumped in with them?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, I think, and I'm totally with you. I love Jon Stewart. I think he brings a lot of valid points to the discussion. And look, media is not above criticism, that's for sure. But I think to say that all media, and certainly all broadcast media, should be lumped up in this kind of category of de-escalation is absolutely false. Because as you mentioned, right-wing media and Fox News in specific, they're talking about vaccine hesitancy. They're out there every night hammering home, talking about mask mandates being, a violation of our freedom. So you have to wonder whether or not that statement really is fair.
All right, I thought that was interesting. Ayman Mohyeldin and Mehdi Hassan talking about Jon Stewart on Jay Tapper with Jay Tapper. All right, what's next? All right, here's Mayor Pete, now Secretary Pete Buttigieg, back on the job after taking a few weeks of paternity leave from his gig as the Secretary of Transportation. I was listening to him talk here, and I was thinking he'd have been a good president. Maybe he still will be. Anyway, he and his husband, they adopted premature twins, and he's being attacked by Tucker Carlson and others on the right for taking paternity leave. And I was thinking about Tucker Carlson versus Pete Buttigieg in an actual fist fight. I thought about that for a few minutes out in the lawn today, and I was like, Pete Buttigieg was in the army. He was in Afghanistan. He carried a gun around. Looks pretty athletic and fit and trim. And Tucker Carlson, he probably is. He's just a rich kid who probably never has been in a fight. And I feel like I think Buttigieg would be just dropping all kinds of punches and kicks, and Tucker Carlson would have his eyes closed doing the Pete Dominic punch, which is like a closed fist doggy paddle. Just roll him up in front of you, or slap fighting, he's so mushy. That'd be the only issue. Anyway, I got done fantasizing about Pete Buttigieg kicking the shit out of Tucker Carlson, and then I wanted to play for you that he's not going to apologize to him or anybody else, and he's going to actually use the stupid insult to talk about the importance of paid family leave.
As you might imagine, we're bottle feeding and doing it at all hours of the day and night. And I'm not going to apologize to Tucker Carlson or anyone else for taking care of my premature newborn infant twins. The work that we are doing is joyful, fulfilling, wonderful work. It's important work. And it's work that every American ought to be able to do when they welcome a new child into their family. I campaigned on that. So did the president. The Build Back Better agenda includes provisions for paid family leave. By the way, we're pretty much the only country left that doesn't have some kind of national policy for paid leave. I think it's down to us and Papua New Guinea. It is long past time to make it possible for every American mother and father to take care of their children when a new child arrives in the family.
Sorry, I think maybe Pete Buttigieg was baiting Tucker Carlson or some asshole on the right take a shot at him so he could use his situation to argue as to why every American should have this be a national policy, paid leave. And Pete Buttigieg also weighed in on the supply chain issues that it seems like a lot of people are now talking about, which is a really important, fascinating issue. I'm going to dig deep on this podcast to try to understand and get a wide variety of opinions, because this is one of those things, the supply chain issues. I think predominantly want to focus on one main issue causing the supply chain issues. It's COVID. It's mostly COVID, but it's trade, it's tariffs, it's economics, it's supply and demand. It's a lot. There's so many different things. And so here is Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation, commenting on the supply chain issues. And then we'll talk about whether or not we're going to have Christmas. I think Laura Ingram was saying Christmas is canceled and that Joe Biden is the Grinch because you're not going to be able to get your fucking stupid toys from China. Anyway, here's Buttigieg.
Well, certainly a lot of the challenges that we've been experiencing this year will continue into next year, but there are both short-term and long-term steps that we can take to do something about it. Look, part of what's happening isn't just the supply side, it's the demand side. Demand is off the charts. Retail sales are through the roof. And if you think about those images of ships, for example, waiting at anchor on the West Coast,
every one of those ships is full of record amounts of goods that Americans are buying because demand is up, because income is up, because the president has successfully guided this economy out of the teeth of a terrifying recession.
And I retweeted this tweet yesterday, by the way, along these lines from the Working Families Party Twitter account, where the tweet is simply, it's not a worker shortage, it's a wage shortage. It's not a worker shortage, it's a healthcare shortage. It's not a worker shortage, it's a paid sick leave shortage. It's not a worker shortage, it's a child care and elder care shortage. I thought that was so succinct. That's what Twitter's for. All right, now here is a great political ad against, this is an attack ad, this is a negative ad against Republican Glenn Youngkin. He's running for governor of Virginia, where apparently the race has gotten tight. And this is from the former Republican Never Trumpers Lincoln Project.
Who is the real Glenn Youngkin? It's not the one behind the slick TV ads and mailers. The real Youngkin begged to go on the radio show of Seb Gorka, one of Donald Trump's most extreme supporters. Gorka said white supremacists weren't the problem just days before Charlottesville.
They just literally came down the street to fucking hit us just now.
And Glenn Youngkin wants his support. Gorka backs radical anti-Semitic groups, and Glenn Youngkin went on his radio show.
Sebastian, thanks for having me.
Gorka proudly wore a Nazi militia group's medal, and Glenn Youngkin kissed his ass.
This is not the Virginia that we all know.
On Seb Gorka's radio show, he promised he'll impose the Trump agenda on Virginia. Youngkin knows exactly who Gorka is and what he stands for. Hate, division, neo-Nazis and white supremacists, the Trump agenda. Now, Virginia knows it too.
Thank you, Glenn Youngkin.
The Lincoln Project paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising.
All right, and now here's Terry McAuliffe, who is running as a Democrat, talking about the stakes in this election.
But it just reminded everybody of the stakes of this election. We don't want a Donald Trump wannabe. He wants to ban abortions, Jim. And now with the Trump Supreme Court, this is a reality. Abortion is gone in Texas. Glenn Youngkin wants to bring that to Virginia. He said top of his agenda will be the voting rights laws in Georgia. He wants to bring them here to Virginia. So yesterday I had Dr. Jill Biden here. I've got Stacey Abrams here. I got Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. I have President Obama coming in on Saturday. The President of the United States will be here the week after. We got everybody here, and the Vice President Kamala Harris.
Oh, we almost forgot the Vice President of the United States. Okay, well, the other big, depressing, scary, awful story that unfolded over the weekend is that the heart of President Biden's climate agenda now in jeopardy. Of course, this is the most important issue to me outside of trying to maintain and preserve our democracy here in the United States. But a program, they're directly connected, of course, a program to rapidly replace the nation's coal and gas-fired power plants with renewables now likely to be cut from the Democrats' $3.5 trillion social and climate package because of one senator, Joe Manchin. Well, we should say all of the Republican senators, and then Joe Manchin of West Virginia opposing it. Manchin, of course, has personal financial ties to the coal industry, and his state is one of the nation's top producers of coal and gas. And, of course, this isn't about money because Joe Manchin, he approved $9.1 trillion in military spending over the last 10 years. It's nonsense. Some House and Senate Democrats are switching to Plan B, which is a tax on carbon dioxide pollution to try to curb the pollution. But that, of course, has its own set of political challenges, given the current rise in inflation and energy prices. And here's a tweet from Joy Reid about that to Joe Manchin. Hi, Senator. Can you comment on whether or not your financial ties to the coal industry, including the $500,000 in dividends you collect annually from the coal brokerage Systems and your relationships with the oil lobby, does that impact your stance on this? Then she says, we've tried booking you on the show, of course. So lots to talk about here. Really important development. Bernie Sanders tweeting, how can anyone say they are, quote, patriotic and love their country when they refuse to act against the drought, flooding, forest fires, and extreme weather disturbances which cause our nation so much destruction? Climate change is real. The U.S. must lead the way in combating it. Not bad, the impression, and the point, of course. Now, here's Democrat Steve Cohen of Tennessee on MSNBC, and a great question being asked about this by Lindsay Reiser and Candace Gibson on MSNBC yesterday.
And also to Candace's question in a previous segment here, how can President Joe Biden go before this UN climate summit and hold his head up high and encourage other countries to do something when we're not able to get it done?
It'll be quite difficult, and that's one of the things why the House wanted to get it passed by the end of this month. We've got to show that we're doing things in our country to go and ask other countries to be doing things about climate change. Climate change is it's a threat to the planet. And so it's one of the first things we all need to be concentrating on and acting on. And the state of West Virginia should not hold back the world. This is a spot to where West Virginia truly is holding back the world, because as the United States goes, so goes the climate change agreements. We had accords in Paris, which Trump got us out of it. But we had horrific conditions, and they will even get worse. And we need to pass our Earth on to the next generation in a better shape than we received it. And we're not doing a very good job of that.
Yes, well said, Congressman Cohen. Thank you. That's exactly right. And the House did do a good job of it. It's the Senate that's holding it up. Now, let's go over to one of the leaders, the environmental leaders of our time, the leader of the divestment campaign to divest from fossil fuel industry. It's the great writer and professor, activist Bill McKibben. He was on Background Briefing show with Ian Masters. I thought this is worth sharing about the latest development.
The news overnight that Senator Manchin has decided to block the single most important part of the climate legislation is a great discouragement, not only for what's going to happen in this country, but for the chances of ginning up support for stronger targets and more ambitious action in other countries as well, since the whole world knows that we've put way more carbon into the atmosphere than anybody else. It's clearly, in any just world, we'd be making the first big moves.
And this is the senator from West Virginia who's in the coal business. That's his family business. So does that mean that there's anything left in the bill that deals with the future?
There's lots of things left in the bill, but they all, as people have been pointing out this morning, they're all carrots, not sticks. They're all more tax credits to build more solar panels and wind turbines, which is great, but we have to be at the same time shutting down the coal and gas and oil combustion as much as we possibly can. And the part that Manchin wants to remove is the part with teeth, the part that would penalize utilities for continuing to do what they're doing now or changing just very slowly.
All right, well, I think that whole episode is actually worth listening to. Is always worth listening to Bill McKibben, one of the leaders in our movement here. And that's Background Briefing with Ian Masters. Well, there's a lot more news to talk about, but that's all the clips I got for you. And I got three great guests joining me coming up as well. And increasingly, I'm wondering if I should do these long 30-minute news segments. So I do want your feedback. Send it to me. Show feedback. standupwithpete@gmail.com. I always enjoy putting it together, but it is a lot of work, so I want to make it worth it. And that's why right now it's time to do the news dump. All the rest of the headlines I've got for you. And let's go to Pete Coe with an old classic.
Mountain cyclist pedaling hard, accelerates and jumps. Too bad he didn't see that grizzly on today's news dump.
Yes, Pete Coe, thank you very much. And Phil Round out in Wyoming just sent me some vitamin N of what he is claiming is a grizzly bear's den. I love your nature photos. And Phil said he put his feet in first, just in case if it was a bear, he ate his feet and not his face, because he needs his face for singing. Love you, Phil. Thank you for that. All right, what have I got for you? Let's start with another Superman headline. Superman has been around for over 80 years, but DC Comics has now decided not only is Superman's, I guess, son, is it, bisexual, now the superhero who's been known to forever to stand for truth, justice, and the American way. The tagline is changing. It's truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. A nod to the past, an eye toward the future, apparently, to DC. Well, to me, it sounds like Superman hates America now. Now what's next? Now Superman is woke, and America's no longer exceptional? This is insane. I just cannot wait to have more outrage about a comic book character. 3 terrible headlines I saw over the past few days. 17 missionaries, including 5 children, kidnapped in Haiti. A British MP was murdered by an immigrant, so that's not going to be good. And, of course, 5 people were murdered last week in Norway by a guy who says he's a Muslim convert. So we're going to see a lot of controversy flaring in Europe now over this bullshit. Meanwhile, we have these types of attacks and attempts each and every day almost in this country by white anti-American government domestic types. So let's pay close attention to the motives and the impulses and not let them divide us. I'm serious here. These violent people, that's exactly what they want, these terrorists. So we've got to not let that happen. How about this story? NASA has tracked over 27,000 near-Earth objects, some over 1 kilometer in size, and several massive asteroids are expected to whiz close to Earth in the coming weeks, including one nearly the size of the Empire State Building. 2 are expected to soar near the planet on Saturday, followed by more in the coming days, according to NASA's Center for Near-Earth Object Study. So read more about that at ABC News. And let's hope that we are somehow able to evade them all. I don't think my shed is asteroid-proof. It's not even black walnut-proof. I keep getting nailed, loud clunks on the top of the roof here. Hope one doesn't come through while I'm taping. All right, well, this is good news. An 11th hour deal was reached Saturday, averting a strike of film and television crews that would have seen some 60,000 behind-the-scenes workers walk off their jobs, would have frozen productions in Hollywood and across the U.S. Striketober continues, however, in other companies and industries. A lot of folks organizing and demanding better wages. They're calling it Striketober, and I love it, as painful as it is for those who are crossing the picket line, or for those who are on the picket line. Don't cross the picket line or you're a dick. Well, Facebook is planning to hire 10,000 workers in the European Union over the next 5 years to work on a new computing platform that will actually swallow kids whole. So, actually, I didn't read past the headline. I don't know what it's going to do, but I'm sure it's not going to be great. The former president, Bill Clinton, has been treated for an infection, and he has been released from a California hospital Sunday morning. Former First Lady and Senator and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton accompanied her husband and had been admitted Tuesday when he was released from the University of California Irvine Medical Center. President slowly moving out the doorway. He shook hands with doctors and nurses and also touched them on the shoulders. Like, thanks for taking care of me. Can I put my hand on your shoulder? All right, thanks. All right. Statement posted by an aide quoted a doctor saying Clinton's fever and white blood cell count are now normalized and he'll be able to return home to New York to continue his course of antibiotics. Thanks. Thank you guys for the antibiotics. I like them. I'll put them in a smoothie. Thank you. In a smoothie? Why did he say that? You can put your antibiotics in a smoothie. I think he needs a better doctor. Who's the richest man of them all? Well, if you define rich by monetary wealth, I guess apparently it's Elon Musk. I mean, that's not how I define wealth. I define wealth by how much time that you have with the people that you love doing the things that you like while you're healthy. I don't know. That's my definition. But most people define it, unfortunately, by how much money you have. And apparently, Elon Musk has the most. He has he's worth like $230 billion, and now he has more money than Jeff Bezos, is the richest person in the world. Apparently, his wealth is more than Bill Gates and Warren Buffett combined. So those guys got to be feeling pretty inferior to Elon Musk. Ugh, gross. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm going to call it. It's late, and I have 3 guests. 34 minutes in, I'm very excited to bring you all 3 of these conversations, of all of which are worth listening to and great and covering a lot of different grounds. So is that okay with you if I stop the news now and shift gears? All right, thank you. Thank you for saying it's okay out loud. I appreciate your affirmation. Let me get it started with, I'm going to do it in this order. I'm going to have Fed Ingram on education. That's about 10 minutes. Then I'm going to bring Maura on for Maura Mondays. That's almost 40 minutes. And then I've got Michael Cohen for about 25 minutes or so. and they're all great conversations. I hope that you'll get a lot out of all of them or whatever ones you listen to. I try to post 2 every day, but this week I got 3 because I had a fun trip. And you get a bonus. Have you signed up for a subscription to give me a bonus? Do it now. Okay, so first of all, he is former teacher who grew up in inner city Miami, attended public schools, pursued his love of music, went to the great Bethune-Cookman University on scholarship, became the first member of his family to earn a post-secondary degree in music education. He would go on to become a music director and band teacher in Miami-Dade public schools for 10 years. Also a very accomplished musician in his own right, performing all over the state nationally as a saxophone soloist and conductor. He won all kinds of teacher awards, and then he was elected to be the president of the United Teachers of Dade. So he ran the teachers union in South Florida. Then he ran the state union, the Florida Education Association, and now he is the elected secretary-treasurer, basically the second in command over at the American Federation of Teachers. That's AFT.org under Randy Weingarten. He is an amazing speaker. I always love listening to him speak. I'm super inspired when he does, as he did last week, and I'm super excited that I got to catch up with Fed Ingram, who is also, by the way, on Twitter. It would really put me over the moon if you told Fed that you heard this interview with him. I'd love that. At Fed Ingram, FEDINGRAM. We go way back, and I love talking to this guy. We caught up for about 10 minutes in Florida last week, and now you get to hear it first. And only right here on Stand Up.
Nice and easy, because it's great to see Fed. He brings me so much happiness and energy, and always makes me feel better knowing that he is on the job. But, sir, you just switched jobs. You got a major, exciting new promotion. I've already talked all about it, but you move from the South, from Florida, to the mid-Atlantic, and there's a climate situation, and from what I can tell, you are struggling. Take me through it. How are you doing? Have you had a winter in Maryland or wherever you're at?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Pete. Listen, it is so great to be with you. I just want to tell you that, thank you for your long-standing friendship and your advocacy for, trying to make our society a little bit better. I started teaching down in Miami. I was the union president down in Miami, moved up to Tallahassee, was the union president there where we have met, and, you've been a part of FEA and our Florida Education Association family for years now, and I appreciate that. And then just last year, in the middle of the pandemic, I was voted by our membership, by our national membership, where we represent 1.7 million members in the AFT, to become the secretary-treasurer, which is the number 2 at American Federation of Teachers. So I work directly with Randy Weingarten, who is always on the case and is a fierce labor advocacy person, and she's been in that position for a long time, but I am learning a lot and doing a lot, and these are perilous times, but I think unions have always found their greatness in the worst of times.
Appreciate all that, but what about the weather?
Well, listen, I haven't really officially had a winter in Maryland yet, so I live just outside of D.C. I'm not looking forward to that. I'm a Miami boy, so let me not even say Florida. I'm Miami, where it's 325 days a year. It's 75 to 90 degrees, and so the weather is starting to change a little bit now. Like you said, it's the Mid-Atlantic, but I think it's the Northeast and coming from Miami, so it should be fun. I am buying a lot of jackets and coats and scarves and hats and mittens and getting all ready for the cold. So we'll see.
All right, so let me just ask you first about what AFT is doing, how you're seeing this major legislation that hopefully will get approved, if you ask me, and what your interests are there. Because, a lot of people say it hasn't been sold well enough, and we can talk about that and blame whoever we want. I want you to tell me why you think it's great, why it's great for teachers, for educators, for schools, for the public. What are you looking for, and what difference will this bill potentially make?
Sure. So let me answer your first question. The American Federation of Teachers, as you know, our members do God's work. We work with children every day. We never stop teaching. We did it online. We did asynchronous learning. We've done hybrid learning. We've done virtual school. And now, for the most part, we are back in school all across this country, even during the pandemic, putting our lives on the line. But I will have you know that over 90% of our members are vaccinated throughout the country. And so we're really proud of that, because that is not only good for for that member. It's good for the person and persons that they're with every day, and which is our young people. Now, given that circumstance, we have this major legislation, the Build Back Better Act, which is followed up with an infrastructure bill coming from the Biden administration and Congress. We support all these efforts. We support all these efforts, one, because the infrastructure. When we talk infrastructure when it relates to education, we're talking about the physical plan of schools. We're talking about air conditions. We're talking about HVAC systems. We're talking about upgrading classrooms so that we don't have as much dust that happens in our ventilation systems. This is what this Build Back Better Act, in fact, $80 million nationally would go directly in our public schools for infrastructure. The other part of the bill, the Build Back Better Act, listen, we're trying to get kids out of poverty. We're trying to get kids out of poverty. This will continue to lift our kids out of poverty. This child tax credit, we need that as a society, as families who have been struggling for decades after decades. And so we support this bill 100%. We're hoping that they can push this thing over the edge and come to some kind of compromise that makes sense for the people. Not that makes sense for politics or politicians, but we want the family, the mom and the dad that are struggling, the aunts and the uncles and grandmas and granddads who take care of these kids every day. We want them to be able to say, our government, our leaders have done something for us that we can actually see and feel and touch. And we can put this money back into the economy because we can buy food, because we can have a place to live, because we can have a car to drive. And we can send our own kids to college. So many of our members have such a difficult time sending their own kids to college because it's unaffordable, because they cannot afford it. This Build Back Better Act has money in it for colleges and universities, specifically to community colleges, so that we can make that affordable for a kid who is a B average kid or a C average kid who just wants to go and have a better life than their parents had.
Yeah, well, I hope it gets passed because of all the reasons that you just said. I also just want to ask you about what is happening at the local level all over this country, including in my community, where you've got parents now divided over curriculum, specifically curriculum that is around history and racial inclusion and diversity. As long as I've known you, you've been a black man. Black administrators and educators especially are under fire and have had more focus put on them the way that they are teaching, which is the same way everybody's teaching. What is your advice specifically for those of us in our communities who are speaking up for diversity and inclusion and trying to confront and combat and support certainly minority teachers and educators and even superintendents? What can we do, and how are you seeing this issue?
So here's where I see this issue. And as you mentioned, obviously, I'm an African-American, born and raised, will be until the day I die. And this is not the first time that we've seen this visceral attack on school boards. Let me just remind your audience about the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education. You see some of the ugly pictures where people are screaming at Ruby Bridges when she tried to integrate schools. People know the Little Rock Nine. Let me remind you what happened at those school board meetings. There were people who were fighting against, who ended up on the wrong side of history. But those school board meetings were just as visceral, were just as aggressive, where there were physical altercations, where there was expletives shown to principals like we just saw the other day up in Maryland and in Broward County, where you have to have superintendents and principals have security guards follow them home, where people are having their homes vandalized and getting cold calls from people who are giving them threats about doing something right for children. This is not the first time, and I will remind your audience that we got through this once. We will get through this again. We will get through this because we are on the right side of history. We want our kids to be safe. We want your kids to be safe. If you're coming to school board meetings and you're coming for the wrong reasons, not talking about education and the betterment of kids, you're there for the wrong reasons. This is not politics. My child's life should not be in the balance of some political ideology. I wear a mask for you. You wear a mask for me. That is what society is all about. That is what democracy is all about, that we can help each other and lift each other up. And so as bad as it is right now, I would just remind people, again, Little Rock Nine, Ruby Bridges. Brown versus Board of Education passed in 1954. It took us 16 years in this country to get every single school integrated in this country. And throughout those 16 years, there were school board meetings that were vandalized. There were principals and superintendents that were cast aside. There were people who were shown the door because they wanted to know what was right. And we're going to have to power through this. We're going to have to continue to go to school board meetings and speak truth to power that these vaccines work, that we need all of our kids to you know, if that's your decision to go to our public schools, then we need them to be safe. And masking is important to that. And so, you know, the ugliness in terms of the racism that this is bubbling up it's a sad day for us.
The one thing they say a lot, and I'll just tell you, this is my last question to you, because I do want to get your take on this, and you're always real with me. You hear a lot of parents, including in my community, say, you're teaching my white child to feel guilty, to feel shame. My answer to that is let teachers teach. And if your child is feeling something, that's your job as a parent. You're not doing a good enough job as a parent. That's what I have been telling people. But what do you say to any concerned parent who says, you're teaching my child to be ashamed that he or she is an American?
Oh, no, that is such a twisted way to look at history. History is what it is. It's factual. And so teachers will always teach the facts. And the AFT will always support the facts. Slavery is a part of our history. Jim Crow laws are a part of our history. Wherever your family decided on that, then it is up to you to teach your child. Because as a parent, dad, mom, aunt, uncle, whoever steps in is the first and most important teacher that child will ever have. They start and end with the moral compass that you have in your house, with character education, with those things that are spiritual in some sense that a teacher in a classroom can't teach your kid. And so you have to know that your kid will make the right decisions. Teachers are teaching facts. The students, we have to arm them with what's right, with what the facts are, and have them make their own decision about where they will go in life, what they will believe in life, and what decisions they will make in life. We cannot not teach the facts of history. And some of our history is very ugly, but we have to teach it all, good, bad, or indifferent.
I'm so glad to talk to you today. I'm so glad you are now where you are and what you are doing, and excited to see wherever the future takes you. Thank you so much for talking to me, Fed.
Yeah, well, listen, thank you for having me.
There he goes, Fed Ingram, at Fed Ingram. Tweet him and tell him you heard him at Stand Up with Pete, and that would mean the world to me. Just check my Twitter timeline for any and all guests, including, coming up now, the great Maura Quint, who is awesome on Twitter at Behind Your Back, where she's got over 120,000 followers. We catch up pretty much every Monday. We call it Maura Mondays. And Maura, of course, is a very brilliant writer and humorist. I mean, she's hilarious. She's also an activist. She's a mom. And she's so good on this and every other guest appearance she makes on podcasts and shows. She is now the campaign chair at Americans for Tax Fairness. She's the former executive director and co-founder of taxmarch.org. But now she's at a similar group doing similar work, advocating to tax the rich, amongst others, create fair and equitable tax policy. Check her out there. Follow her on Twitter at Behind Your Back. We had a great conversation, as we always do, and it starts right now.
When sunrise gives you a side ache, it's Maura Mondays.
Yes, that means Maura Quint is here. We missed each other last week, but we're happy to have you back to kick off the week. Plenty to talk about, plenty of fun to be had and discussed. Hi, thank you.
I'm so happy to be here. I am ready for fun. Where's the fun?
Well, it's
Bring
Halloween. The fun is your pinned tweet. You wrote this years ago. You tweeted, it must have been it says 2014. For Halloween, I'm dressing up as my potential and getting wasted. It's very, very funny joke. I did write that
years ago, and I have never failed. That's been my costume ever since. It's perfect.
What does your potential look like? What goes into that costume? Do you go to do you have the temporary costume stores in your vacant Sears in your town?
Oh, yeah. The Spirit Halloween you're talking about?
Yeah. Who owns those? And are they making money?
That is such a good question. Who owns those? It's like a weird conspiracy. What if no one does? What if it's just like a ghost, like a zombie or something, just at the head of it all? Like maybe it's the undead.
I mean, if anybody knows who they are, please let us know, because I don't know what could be. It sounds like a very hectic kind of thing. Like, what are you doing the rest of the year? Do they they must make a lot of money? Do they use the same inventory? I've got several questions. I want to find a Halloween spirit store owner.
It's the hermit crab of businesses. They just, crawl out and find a new shell and like crawl in during every season. But they should have it for everything. I don't know why it's just Spirit Halloween. Like, why don't we have this for all holidays? There should be like, Spirit Valentine's Day or Spirit President's Day. I don't think whatever.
Because I think Halloween is a real economic driver, because every weekend for like 4 weeks there are costume contests, costume parties, whatever. And do you see that could you do that with any other holiday but maybe Christmas?
Pete, capitalism can do anything it wants to do. If it puts its mind to it, we could have 4 solid weekends of President's Day. There could be dress up as your favorite flag. It could be a whole thing. And they're just being lazy about it, frankly. That's what I think. Okay, so let's talk about another couple seasonal things. Apparently you try to do the right thing, which is to bring your age-appropriate kids to a seasonal appropriate event, and it became existential to you. Tell me about Corn Maze Day. Yeah, I took my kids to a corn maze. I took them to a corn maze because we didn't know what else to do, and it was fall, god damn it. So we're going to do a fall thing.
That's right.
So we went to a field where they had plowed out, this beautiful maze. Of course, they didn't give you the map or anything. You just walk into the corn like you're looking to leave your family and children behind. Like you're just like leaving it all. Like you should dye your hair before you enter. You come out a completely different person. You just wander into cornfields. And I did it because it's supposed to be fun. And every couple of years, I think, oh, right, that's supposed to be fun. Let's go do that. And it's like I give myself just enough time to forget. Like in the same way that people have babies again, right? Like it's just like, this was hell. But like, you just go just long enough that you're like, oh, but they're cute again. Like, I kind of want one. It's like, that's me with corn mazes. It's just like, just long enough to be like, oh, this is a fun thing to do. But it's not fun. It's miserable. There's no point to it. You're just wandering and you're not seeing new sights. It's not like they have like cool stuff set up over here. And you're like, looking at this. It's just corn. And then there's more corn. And then you turn the corner and it's corn. It's the same corn. Is it the same corn you saw before? I don't know. It's just more corn. Sorry.
Describe the moment when you pass another parent with his or her kids and you just have to have that silly like, oh, so you again. That was real funny when you told me that.
Well, because the first time you see someone in the maze, like you have that moment where it's just like, oh, you guys came from that. We came from this way. And this is in the egg. We tried that already. Oh, but not that one. Well, maybe. Okay. Well, good luck to you. Like the first time. And then the second time, it's kind of like, oh, you again. And then like the third, fourth time that you're running into these people as you're desperately trying to get out of this fucking maze, you're like, I guess we'll have to eat your family. Like, I don't know. We're going to live here in this maze now. And we're not working with you. So you're now, when we light this field on fire, because that's what we're going to do to get out of here. When you go up
you
look tasty.
On its face, it seems like a good idea for an escape to burn it down, but you would die if all that corn would kill you of smoke inhalation for sure. Do you think,
oh yeah, popcorn just flying in your eyes.
That just brought up a question. Do you think anybody's ever met at a corn maze and then maybe dated?
A meet cute? Wow, a shuck cute. I don't think anyone has ever met in a corn maze and had that be like a romantic thing. No, I think probably people have I think it's probably the opposite of a meet cute. I think people have gone into a corn maze together and left mortal enemies. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, that's more likely. Although you did tweet about, you said, I've been posting less because I just want to make a bunch of sex jokes and I don't trust any of you to handle that well. And then you went ahead and made a sex joke tweet hours later. You said, I don't know why people equate summer with sex. In July, I'm hot and sweaty and it's gross. Get away from me unless you're an ice cube or a fan. But the moment it's fall, I'm not ready to turn on my heat. I'm cold, so...
That was a good dramatic reading. I liked that. That was
yeah, I try
you went through all the emotions there.
I try to put a lot into my Twitter performances. So you're saying fall is a good time for sex because of the temperature?
Fall's the best time for sex, actually, I think, because like when you get to winter and it's just cold, so then like all the intermediary stuff is like a pain in the ass when it's winter, because you're either like you're cold taking off your clothes or like you don't want to get that whole thing. Fall is like the perfect thing where it's like I'm a little bit cold, but like it's not unpleasant. It's a good temperature for sex. That's how everyone chooses their sex life, right? Based on the outside temperature, like pulls up the weather app and just like, sex today, I see.
I think the temperature probably has something to do. Like I definitely thought you got me thinking about how you don't want to take your clothes off, period. Like, forget about sex. Like, when I get into the shower, much less, I'm freezing. Like, we don't have really use a lot of heat in this house either. I mean, those people that are sociopaths and they crank their heat up all summer, that they can afford it, and all winter, and they don't care about the planet or whatever. You know, we wear sweaters and hats inside. I don't want to take off my clothes for any reason. Don't get me wrong. I will. I'm up for sex in any temperature, but I am more discouraged in the cold.
Interesting. See, I'm more discouraged in the heat. Like, when I'm already hot, like I don't want another sweaty body next to mine. Like, I feel gross. Your body heat is just gonna like be more body heat near me. It's just like unpleasant. That's not like a fun time to me. I don't enjoy it. But if I'm cold, now your body heat is doing something for me. I'm thinking sex fully in the utility purposes. Yeah,
well, I mean, now you know, folks, this is a good time. Autumn. This time of year.
It's cuffing season, right? Isn't this the beginning of cuffing season?
What is it?
Isn't it the beginning of cuffing season?
What's that? Cuffing season?
Cuffing season is this like thing where people are going to be cold through the winter and they're not going to want to go out and they're not going to like meet new people. So you have to find someone in the fall that you can just like hole up with for the next like 4 to 5 months or so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What is it called? Cuffing?
Cuffing. Like cuffing yourself to someone, I assume. I have no idea what the etymology is. I'm making this up on the spot.
Do you think people make the conscious decision, like, I need someone for the winter?
No, I don't think anyone makes well, actually, no, that's a lie. I think some people do. I think some people absolutely are just like, I set a reminder for myself last year. Here we go. Let's get this done. Time to bring someone into my home.
You also wrote the best part of Halloween is that constant feeling of dread and terror becomes seasonally appropriate. What was the impetus for that one?
Being, constantly full of dread and terror. No, I mean, like every day, you wake up. Well, if you're a non-functional person, every day you wake up and you like look at Twitter and you just get miserable and upset. And this is the time where like I was doing that this morning, just scrolling through, thinking, wow, we are so fucked. And I then was just trying to think through my day, and I was like, oh well, it's like getting cooler. Like I could watch a horror film. Like I'm watching a horror film right now. It's fine. I have all of those feelings. I'm good. We're done.
That's why I always have a hard time escaping, like thinking of the escape from the world and my own stress to watch something scary. I'm like, no, life is scary. I would rather distract myself with something that's less scary and just purely entertaining. I mean, today I read the whole caught up on the news about Joe Manchin demanding they cut out, climate things from the bill because he makes money off of coal in West Virginia. And Maura, I was like so overwhelmed and depressed by it. Like I went outside, I put everything, my phone away, and I planted like 24 flower bulbs by a fire. I mean, I just had to escape. I had to escape it was a healthy choice. But here we are talking about it.
What you planted was hope. Hope for tomorrow. You took that climate negativity and you're like, no, I will help the planet somehow.
I like that
is how
spin.
I will exist for the day.
My hope garden. That's exactly.
Your hope garden.
That's exactly.
Lovely.
I keep planting all these really lovely flowers outside the girls' bedroom windows in hopes that they're going to. It's going to affect them somehow now or in the future. It's just going to be when they open their shade in the morning, they're going to look out and see these lovely flowers. But
that is so beautiful.
They haven't
and lovely
mentioned them yet.
But you're doing something good for the earth and for your children. That's beautiful. I read the Joe Manchin shit and said, oh, look at this. I have everything to make Bloody Marys. That's how I dealt with it.
I do that too. Don't get me wrong, because there was plenty of news. I mean, what did you think? that one does seem inescapable. I mean, I don't. All these people talking about Joe Manchin, and Democrats got to do. There's nothing. I've yet to see someone make a good suggestion on what could be done to get him to change his vote, to get him to do the right thing for the future of the planet, much less Democrats and their interests.
I don't think that there is much to do to get him to do the right thing. With Joe Manchin, I feel like it's just you have to kind of trick him into it one way or the other. Like you're not gonna appeal to his moral center or something. You just have to kind of like muddle the numbers and the facts enough so that he goes, oh, okay, did I think of that? That's a great idea. Like he's I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of respect for his intellect, I suppose.
Do you think? Have you heard this narrative? I mean, you're obviously someone who's constantly in the thick of these issues, advocating for tax policy. And do you think there's this narrative out there that Democrats haven't sold it well enough? People don't know what's in the bill because when they hear about what's in the bill, it polls well. And then I think it was somebody, Bernie Sanders over the weekend, blamed the media for not doing a good job selling it or something. And I'm wondering if you agree with either of those approaches, because I think I think it's true the media hasn't done a good enough, because the media does what gets them the best ratings, and sometimes talking about great policies like child, welfare policies like universal pre-K and paid leave and college. Maybe they're not going to get ratings. They're just nobody cares to watch that or hear about that. I think
this is a very complicated and difficult problem. I agree that no one knows what's in the bill. It's not something that is in people's faces, and that is a conversation I have nonstop in progressive organizations, because we recognize that it is incredibly important that people know what Democrats are actually trying to accomplish, and all of those things are very popular, and people don't know. Why would they know? I wouldn't know if I weren't in these meetings nonstop. There's no way. But the question then is is the media doing a good job? I mean, this is where the media, when you're talking about mainstream media, has become such a conglomerate and so corporate owned and so centrally run. And so much of it is controlled by fairly conservative overlords. I don't know what to call them, but that's sort of who's behind it all. And the right has done a fantastic job of finding ways to push out whatever it is they want to say. And Democrats have relied on this mainstream media to push out their messaging. And that has completely changed. They are relying on, I mean, in general, Democrats have this very, I never want to say that anyone running things is naive, because I think that takes away a lot of the just bad choices and terrible decisions that have been made. But it does seem to generally operate with this sense of naivete of well, this is how it was done 30 years ago, so this is still how things work, which is absurd. Maybe that's what happens when you have the same Democrat consultants in power and talking in the ears of people in leadership for decades and decades and decades, and you don't refresh that. But there is still this reliance on mainstream media as opposed to building up a way to push out messaging that doesn't rely on media being a neutral or even a left-leaning entity, because they're not. And that is very clear and has happened, over a period of time. And the right was ready to go. They've built their whole infrastructure in place. They know exactly how to push out messaging, and the left were way, way behind on that. It's very frustrating.
I think that's definitely true, but I also think that the style of messaging that works for a certain type of person on the right is not working for a person on the left, and mainly because there's so much diversity on what's called the left and so little diversity on the right at this point. And so you can't message nearly as effectively when you have so many different types of folks as you can when you have a smaller group of, frankly, white, religious, undereducated, uneducated folks.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily who's on the right.
How dare you? Who is it?
I think
who
that's
am I missing?
Part of it. You're missing. There is a huge. Well, there's multiple sections actually. You have a lot of just wealthy people or people who believe they're going to be wealthy. You have people who are motivated by the social issues, who are just like abortion is bad and save the unborn babies. You just have that as like one voting block, but you also have a voting block that's just I'm rich or I'm going to be rich. And that's
Right.
a huge voting block. And then, I mean, you have some other mixes in there. I think we just don't see them as much, but I think it gets sort of underestimated how much you have a lot of minority groups in the Republican Party or voting for Republicans. We just don't see them because they don't get spoken about, because, you know, what we see from the right is these nut job far right, crazy talking points, but doesn't seem to be necessarily the what's driving everyone on the right to vote Republican. I think it's limiting to say that they're just a singular voting block. I don't think that they are, but I do think that they have a lot of ways of messaging to people, and I don't think that the left has that.
I think we have comedy.
We're better at comedy, yeah, sure.
I don't know. Someone I just asked Jon Stewart, or Jay Tapper asked Jon Stewart why comedy. Was it Jay Tapper and John?
Yeah, it was.
Was it?
Yeah, they were the ones talking.
Why comedy cuts across, or why it works, or something like that. And it's just I don't know.
Such a what?
I mean, it was just like Tapper knows the answer. It's because it's entertaining. I don't know, because it points out like it. I get kind of tired of that question. Why is comedy so effective when it comes to communicating with people? I mean, for obvious reasons, probably it works.
People like hearing it.
Yeah, it's less boring. I mean, it's always been to me the way to try to talk about, whenever possible, policy. You know, you can not like everything's a joke, but a lighter hearted conversation or a more thoughtful conversation about how policy works, who it helps, who it hurts, and using humor. I mean, but I don't know. It's just it's always interesting to hear that question. Why doesn't the right use it as well? They do. They're fine. It's not funny to us for the most part.
That's right. That's right.
They make jokes. A lot of them.
They make lots and lots of jokes.
Yeah,
They're
didn't you see
really fucking terrible jokes?
John Gruden's jokes? Did you pay attention to that, or is that a sports thing that you don't? The football coach.
Yeah. Oh, right. He's the one who just got fired, right?
Yeah, he had the triple.
Wait, I know sports things. Don't you like write me off as a just what? Because I'm a woman? Is that what it is, Pete?
No, man.
I literally just came from the overtime Cowboys and New England game. Thank you.
No, I actually thought that because I know you pretty well, and you're not big into sports. I'm pretty sure.
No, I'm not. I can just fucking fake it really well.
I mean, like, it's not a generalization at all. I'm not being sexist. I know that you're not a huge sports fan. I'm almost positive.
It's only because I knew that you weren't being sexist that I got to call you sexist. I want the people who don't know what's going on.
You don't. Your kids play soccer. Your kids play soccer, and I'm pretty sure you don't know the rules.
Hey, I know some of them. You got to kick the ball into the big net thing, right?
That's right. I rest my case. No, John Gruden did a triple threat. He did homophobia, sexism, and racism. And then everybody's like, see, they canceled him. I'm like, no, I think the triple threat almost always got you canceled from a lot of certain places, at least. Not always, but certainly recently. You can't do the triple threat. You can't do all three. One maybe you can get away with
2
still.
out of 3 kind of hold. I got you.
But yeah.
It's that's a hat trick, and it's the wrong sport. So
yeah, he's also his whole thing. I will fill you in just quickly. One of the things he mentioned was that the NFL's concussion protocols are too stringent, and that just feeds into this is where I want to get you fired up. This just feeds into this kind of tough guy mentality. It's the weirdest thing that you would say that if you get a concussion, you should just walk it off. You're weak. Like, no, your brain shook in your head. That has nothing to do with your masculinity, your manliness. It can be permanent. But there's this idea of back in the day, we didn't even think about these concussions. And it's true. That's why half the ex-NFL players killed themselves. It's not half. I'm exaggerating, but anyway, he did say something like that. Like, oh, it's just men are weak. Don't be a pussy.
You know, here's the thing. My dad played college football. He went to school on a college scholarship, and he's pretty like, my dad is, he's not woke in any way, but he's, you know, he's actually been kind of thoughtful about football a little bit, in that I had 2 sons and I expected my dad was going to be like, oh, they're going to play football, because that's the kind of person he generally is. And he wasn't. He was like, I don't think they should play football. He was really happy they were going to play soccer or tennis or whatever. He was just like, nah, don't have them play football. It's no good now. It's not good for kids to do. I was shocked by that. But then the other day I was having a conversation with him about players playing in like record degrees of heat and their potential for having like heat stroke and that whole deal.
Yeah.
And he was just like, yeah, I mean, like, and he went with the whole like, goddamn fucking pussy. Like, we used to play, like, fully went that route. And I was just like, what? But I think it's that internalized thing that people in any place, not just within sports or a gender or anything, but like people do. They go through something that was really hard and they get through it. And they sort of like their mindset changes and they get this feeling of like, I did it, so you can too. And it sucks. But I mean, like, I've had to fight that within myself. I had a whole moment because I had some really difficult jobs when I was, you know, in my 20s. Like, I would put my BlackBerry, back when there were still Blackberries, I would put my BlackBerry under my pillow so that if it buzzed in the middle of the night, I could answer it at 2 a.m. because I might need to do that. Like, it was that kind of crazy. Or like, I'd be at my desk and I would not go to the bathroom because I couldn't miss a phone call because it would be a problem. Like, it was very ridiculous. And so I was talking to like this junior to me person, and she was complaining about some of the things that were being asked of her. Yeah. And of course, like, to my experience, when I was her age, they're nothing, the things that were being asked of her. And I had that like knee jerk, like, oh my God, like, get over it. Like, just your job, just do it. And I had to really swallow that and like readjust my mindset and push through, like, yeah, what I went through sucked. No one should have to do that. That's not reasonable. And her concerns are valid concerns. And I have to reframe the way I'm thinking about this. But it's not easy to do.
It's so well said. I'm so glad I asked you that question because of that. Because it's this whole, well, in my day, we had to... Now, don't you sit here and complain to me. Yet we had to lift very heavy things in the heat, or we took every phone call. We didn't take breaks. And what are you talking about? You need... And it's like, no, that wasn't right. That doesn't make it right. That's what progress is. That's what we. But then, you know, you get to a point where people say, "Oh, the wussification of America," and you're making young people weak and afraid. And I think there's some truth to some of that. But let's be very specific with what we are talking about, because we don't need. I don't know. You're going to have adversity. You're going to. Like, we don't need to torture people in the physical heat or at work and provide them no work-life balance because work is the only thing that matters. That's really well said, what you said.
No, yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, especially if you just think of, rather than sort of the previous generation, if you just like put someone in from 200 years ago, right? Like, oh, I'm sorry, your toilet doesn't flush the way you want it to flush. Like, we used to just go shit in a field. Like, go shit in a field and wipe your ass with whatever fucking grass you can find, and then come talk to me, you fucking spoiled little baby. Like, that's, you know, that's just progress of any sort.
To connect to what happens if you have to shit in the corn maze?
I was wondering, as we were lost for like the 90 minutes or so that we were in this corn maze, like how many people had peed or just like taken a dump somewhere in the corn maze.
A corn cob makes it great. You just grind that thing down your ass like a credit card.
Yeah, no, I've heard that's
cleans
like
it right out.
Useful way to
Leaves
do
a couple.
I didn't hit that this time, but maybe 3 years from now, when I've forgotten again and convinced myself
a girl can dream.
You know,
what
I
is
need that info?
Let's play. We should do this every week. What was this tweet about? With Maura Quint at Behind Your Back. Okay, here we go. What was this tweet about? Can't wait to find out how old I have to become till angry old white dudes stop young ladying me. What happened?
Oh, it's just happened to me a lot lately. And then someone like replied to one of my previous tweets or something with this, like, you know, with that kind of a tone. I've been getting young ladied a lot. I am in my 40s. Like, it's absurd to me, but I have been having these like old white men feel this sort of like need to put me in my place or something, which is just, I think maybe because for whatever reason, I hadn't experienced it for the last couple of years. Like, I just hadn't run into it much. And so all of a sudden to be hitting it over and over again, it's just like, I mean, maybe my skincare regime is finally working and I just like look a lot younger. I'm not sure, but
You're getting young lady lately, more recent.
Getting a lot of young lady.
Are you going out maskless?
No, it's not like,
I don't know.
It's not that. No, it's more like
Somebody, I shared that tweet of yours quoting it. This young lady will be joining me on Stand Up with Pete tomorrow. And some actual old lady replied with like, Maura, wah, I'm actually old. I wish someone would call me young lady.
yeah, I got a couple of those.
You can't win. Okay. You cannot win.
No, today in particular, I really could not win. It was just lose.
Was there
like
something?
I was in the corn maze of life. Dead ends.
Was there another? Yeah, there's something else about angry old white men. Where's that tweet?
Yeah, I think it was just the next one because when I said that about
you wrote
white men.
Another dramatic reading by me. I liked reading about witches when I was a teenager, but now the only spell I know is if you type the words, quote, angry white men into Twitter, you conjure them to appear in your mentions.
Instantly. It's amazing. There's no spell as strong as that. I'm telling you. Remember when all the teen witches tried to like put a hex on the moon? I don't know if that was a thing that registered in your world, but like,
I don't think
this is it. This is the strongest spell they could have ever done.
So do you get like a pretty regular still? I mean, you have, let's see, 121, almost 122,000 followers on Twitter. But I would wonder if you've been on there long enough that you don't get like a lot of shit at this point because you've curated. I mean, are you still getting people come through and saying all kinds of stupid sexist shit?
That's part of it because I've been so obsessive about muting and blocking people. I don't get as much, but so every so often I'll get this like weird influx from somewhere. And lately, I guess a lot of my tweets have been making it to Reddit. And so I think I get some from like that as well. And so every so often when I get these little like bursts, it's like I let my guard down because I've done such a good job defending the fortress, that like when stuff is getting through, I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it affects me, I think, a little more. Or when I say affects me, it just pisses me off more than it should probably.
That's fair enough. Always fair enough, I think. All right, let's just talk about the rest of this month in terms of like where you see Build Back Better, the bill going. Of course, it's, I mentioned the Joe Manchin thing, taking that out, but what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you thinking about where we go and what the outcome of this could be? I mean, we're going to get something, right?
Yes. So, well, here's where we are. They tried to bring stuff to a vote. What are we, 2 weeks out now? And needed to do that because we needed to authorize transportation funding. And instead, they went with this sort of short-term solution and just did a temporary little, like, here's just a couple bucks, leave us alone for a little bit kind of thing. That runs out October 31st. October 31st, they're going to face the exact same problem, and they're going to need to re-up this authorization for transportation funding. And they're not going to let that go. Something is going to be done. So the idea is that's when we're going to be seeing this vote again. However, that's 2 weeks away, and it doesn't seem like anybody's making any progress. It looks like we're going to hit all the same walls. My prediction is that October 31st, we're going to do another temporary transportation authorization funding and kick this whole thing into the end of the year. That's what I think. There are some people who are like, we're not going to drag it out. They're just going to come to some, conclusion. They're going to figure something out. There's going to finally be a top line. They're going to vote. They're going to get through by the end of the month. That is certainly possible. I don't know. If I were going to Vegas, though, I would be putting my money on it's not going to happen until the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty good bet, I think, fair to say. And I just want to ask you one more thing, which is about this jobs report, 194,000 jobs in September. I don't know what you think of when you hear the job numbers come out, but it's been devastating, apparently, for women.
Yep.
Why are women so lazy?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think it's probably because every time we apply for a job, someone says, young lady. You did that wrong.
It's discouraging.
It's very discouraging. I think that's probably what it is. Plus, it's, it's fall, so we're just too busy having sex now. Like, who wants to work?
Right. Two good points.
Unless you want to do sex work, which is work. So
two good points.
No, it was very devastating. All of the gains in jobs in the last month were made by men. It was no women basically gained anything. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But I think a primary driver of that is the lack of childcare. Women are stuck in these places where you can't work because you have no ability to get childcare, to have anyone watch your kids. If you can't afford that or you don't have access to that, it becomes impossible to work. And so there are a lot of women who are falling out of the job force.
I heard some, these been a lot of research, a lot of data, a lot of journalism about it. But, you shared this quote from the Commerce Secretary. If you're a mom and you get a job paying $20 an hour, but you got to pay $15 an hour to find a babysitter, why are you doing that? I mean, what are you doing? And even people with a lot more means making pretty good money, they're paying tremendous amount for daycare, for pre-K, to the point that they're discouraged to have another kid. Like, they literally can't afford the daycare. Those first 5 years can be very expensive if you want to go work. And that's why every other country has it.
And that is also why we have to push for a very high top line number for the reconciliation bill for Build Back Better, because that is one of the key elements that's in it. Right. Speaking of things that are not being talked about, but that is one of the driving things is childcare, as along with parental leave, and then also expanding the child tax credit. All of these things allow people to work, which, that's always the complaint. Nobody wants to work.
It's really brilliant fiscal responsibility. It's how economies have to work. Yet there's this stupid, awful medieval ideology that pervades in America that about laziness and living off the government dole and all this shit. It's like, no, I want to work. I can't literally afford to work and have this kid.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. I mean, there will always be people who don't want to work and who are living off the government dole. It's just the idea that they are, poor or minorities, when most of them are just rich fucking assholes. Like, there's plenty of people that applies to, but that's in no way the majority.
There's a lot of smart, hardworking, educated white folks who are like, let's just have one kid, or let's have no kids because we can't afford the kids. And that's if you're a white supremacist, you should want universal pre-K. You should want Build Back Better because it'll allow the whites to get work and improve the economy.
Every time you say the whites, all I can hear is laundry. Like, that's it. It's
really?
I always like, the whites get whiter.
I always say the whites because I don't know who I heard say it first. Chappelle, back in the Chappelle. I don't know. I heard some black person say it, but because forever white people have been saying the blacks. So I think the whites is always funny every time.
That works. That's fine.
The whites. The whites. Okay. Well, I will let you go. I appreciate it as always. One more autumn thing. Do you have anything else to? You really seem to like this season, according to your.
I do,
and I do too. It's really one of my favorites. Granted, I was born in this season. I was born on Halloween. Have I told you that ever? That's my birthday.
I don't know if you have. You must have, right? But I didn't. Remember
yeah, I mean, that. I must have, because usually I tell people upon meeting them the first time.
Yeah, but I forget everything you say. So,
I'm
fair. Sure you've said it. But do you hate it? Do you hate having Halloween birthday?
No, I love it. It's awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
You didn't feel overshadowed by the holiday?
I did a little bit, but I was, comforted by the fact that I got a bunch of presents. But felt like, I'm not getting as much attention as I should if it were just a rando day. Like most of you rando people birthdays that your holiday, your birthday.
They're spoiled. The rando birthday people, they're just spoiled. They go through life thinking there is a day that's just about them. It's a whole different
I went
mentality.
through life thinking, just to be clear, that Halloween, that people were celebrating my birthday. That everybody dressed up because, somehow.
So when you saw skeletons, were you just like, why are they so joyful about my event?
Well, a lot of people still make jokes that I look like a skeleton. So it's a little too close.
I see. I just assumed it was.
The bald man gets a lot of skeleton jokes. There can be no doubt about it. Rightfully so. And finally, where are you on? We're decorating our homes for every holiday. And speaking of skeletons, they seem to be in vogue. There's a lot of skeletons on a lot of lawns. Where are you on decorating for Halloween, the home?
I love when people decorate for Halloween. I hate decorating for anything just because, you have to find where you put things from last year.
Yes.
And get them. I'm no good at that.
The storage. To me, I spend a lot of time. We don't have a big home. I spend a lot of time wondering where they are putting those things the rest of the year. Where?
Yeah. There is a house across the street. It's not even a house. I think it's like an apartment complex. But the people who live on the first floor, they have put up in their window, like the only decoration is just this flashing red neon light that says beware. And it like flashes into my window because it's like directly across. And I just feel like that's perfect. That's it. That's all I need. Just like this constant reminder that there's just terror at all moments and I should be careful.
If there's any way you can send a photo of that to us, I will include it.
To try and take it. I will see.
I will include it in today's show notes. Thank you as always for talking to me. So much fun. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Pete.
Isn't she great? Always great. Maura, we cover it all, and we do it pretty much every Monday right here on Stand Up. Thank you, Maura. Go follow her on Twitter right now at Behind Your Back. And finally, last but certainly not least, former columnist for the Boston Globe, covering national politics and foreign affairs since 2014, author of a couple of great books, including American Maelstrom, the 1968 election, and The Politics of Division, and more. He's a former speechwriter for the State Department, senior fellow at the New American Foundation, and other think tanks as well. He's been a lecturer at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs, and now he's got an awesome newsletter, a Substack, Truth and Consequences, truthandcons.com, everybody. If you're not already subscribing to that, you should check it out right now. He is on Twitter as well, where he's great at SpeechBoy71. Here it goes. Michael Cohen with a Monday conversation.
Hello.
Let's just do the phone.
Yeah, let's do the phone. It's easier.
Okay, I'm recording.
Cool.
You didn't seem too excited by that.
No, I mean, what am I supposed to? That's good.
Here we go. Here we go with Michael Cohen, the great Michael Cohen. What are you laughing at?
What you just said was funny.
How was that funny?
I don't know. It just made me laugh. What can I say?
Well, you were on MSNBC last night, yes?
I was on MSNBC last night. Yes.
First of all, I want to know how that went. You guys covered a lot of ground. I like that show. I did it a few weeks ago. I mean, it's great.
We covered a lot of ground. We talked about the Democrats, talked about the governor's race, Dave Chappelle, Kyrie Irving, Jon Gruden. It was a cornucopia of ongoing current events.
First of all, is there anything to be discussed about this Jon Gruden thing? Can we move past it?
No, we can move. Well, the only thing I would say is just that his attitude about concussions. That's the only thing I'd say that's worth mentioning, but I think we can move on.
Right. His attitude about concussions being, I just talked about that, and it's like, what? It's just ridiculously old-fashioned and silly and insensitive.
He shouldn't be allowed anywhere near a football field as a coach, period. Because
of his point of view on concussions.
Yes, that alone. I mean, forget the horrible fucking things he says about gay people and about black people, but the stuff about concussions is like, this is the guy who's supposed to be in charge of players, in charge of their health, and this is his attitude. It's disgusting.
Right, right. But I mean, he also hit the trifecta: sexism, racism, and misogyny.
He really did.
I mean, homophobia, rather.
Yeah, he is the king of being a douchebag. So he definitely.
Do you feel bad for him at all? His life is ruined.
Not one bit.
You don't?
No.
And the Dave Chappelle thing, that's take some developments because Netflix actually fired people who organized a walkout there. That was so that story is not going away. And
no, that's not what they didn't fire because of the walkout. They fired him because they participated in calls they weren't supposed to participate in. That was my understanding.
Oh, I got it wrong. See,
it's a good thing you had me on.
Thank you for the fact check. Yeah. And what's the governor race story? Can we? I mean, what did you guys cover with that? What do I need to know? What do we need to know about the gubernatorial race? Are we talking about Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, there's two governor's races, right? Beginning of November. There's New Jersey, Phil Murphy up for re-election, and there's the Virginia open governor's race, Terry McAuliffe, who was governor 4 years ago, and running against Republican Glenn Youngkin. I mean, look, the Jersey race, I think Murphy's almost certainly going to win. Every poll has him ahead. In Virginia, I assume McAuliffe is going to win. I mean, who knows? It's based a lot on turnout. If Democratic voters turn out, McAuliffe should win. It's a blue state, not an uber blue state like California, New York, but it's pretty blue. I think every statewide office is held by Democrat. The issue there is that the poll numbers have shown the race to be pretty tight. Youngkin has done a relatively good job of making himself not seem like a mini Trump, although that effort, was dealt a major blow when Trump called into a rally and basically endorsed Youngkin, so that didn't help things. McCullough's been running this campaign basically trying to make Youngkin and Trump seem inseparable. And if that succeeds, I think a lot of Democrats will take a lesson from that, which is the way to mobilize Democratic voters is to compare their opponents to Trump or to scare people about Trump. And I certainly take the view that in this era of really intense polarization, that may be the most effective way for Democrats to mobilize their voters is to talk about Donald Trump.
Well, I don't disagree, but more importantly, some people might say, why are we still talking about Donald Trump? He's gone. There's no way to analyze what's going on by saying he's gone. He is 100% the leader on the right of a movement. It's a cult, and the political leaders are all terrified of him. Is that? I mean, he's still in charge.
Everything you said is correct, but it's not just that. It's also the fact that he is, if he runs, and I see no reason to think that he's not going to run, he will be the 2024 Republican nominee. Not just because I'm not making a prediction here, but literally, every other Republican who's thinking about running, I shouldn't say every one of them, but many of the prominent Republicans have said they're not going to run against Trump if he runs. Nikki Haley has said it. I can't remember. I've heard other people make this comment as well. I mean, it just seems that if he decides to run, I don't think anyone of major stature is going to run against him. I think they're going to, hold their powder until 2028. So I think that's a big part of the reason why we're talking about Trump, because he is not just what you said, and he says absolutely correct. I mean, he is the focal point of the party, but he's the likely Republican nominee in 2024. We should be talking about Trump. I mean, Democrats would be fools not talking about Donald Trump.
Let's talk about paternity leave. I agree with many on the right that say paternity leave is for pussies.
I concur. I second that view, Pete.
I think child care is something that should be done by a mother and only the mother who birthed that child. That's the way it's been for millennia. And the man goes out and works and this is all, of course,
not just works, by the way, kills dinner and brings it home.
Right. Well, yeah. But this is interesting because a lot of this is as a reaction to Tucker Carlson attacking the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, who left for paternity leave after they apparently adopted a premature child. Anyway.
Twins. They have twins, actually.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Does he get double paternity leave? So the thing that's interesting is that this is part of the Build Back Better bill. It's almost like Tucker Carlson set up Pete Buttigieg and other surrogates to talk about why this matters. But can we just dispense of the weird sexism that men shouldn't have time off to be with their newborn babies? Because it's pretty standard in companies across the country, and it seems to be really effective and a great way of attracting talent.
Can I be honest with you? I thought this was kind of a class example of conservative trolling, because Tucker Carlson just says stuff to piss people off and to piss liberals off. And he says this, and then these two morons on Twitter, I can't remember their names. I'm not going to, if I could, I wouldn't repeat them. Make these comments about men shouldn't do paternity leave, and then every liberal expresses outrage about it. I mean, I just think it's I can't take it seriously. It
I
just
actually
feels
don't
like,
mind it. I don't mind the debate. I actually think it's enlightening.
I don't think there is a debate. I don't think there is a debate. I really don't. I mean, I think that this is a very small number of loudmouth people making like stupid comments about paternity leave, mainly for trolling reasons, and a lot of liberals just sort of taking the bait. And I include myself because I was kind of commented on Twitter as well. We're talking about it right now. But I don't know that in this day and age that I think most men now, at least, I mean, I know, take seriously the idea they should be home with their kids, and they should, take time to bond with their kids. So I don't know how serious this is. I think, honestly, I will say this. I mean, I for what it's worth, I haven't heard any Republican politicians sort of make this argument. Thankfully, they make stupider arguments like we shouldn't. But I shouldn't say stupider, equally dumb arguments about we can't afford to allow people to have paid paternity leave. But I think at this point, I don't know how true it is that there's a big number of Americans who think paternity leave is for pussies. I mean, I surely hope there's not.
I don't know if you're traveling in the right circles. I think you're
maybe
probably. I think you're probably right, but maybe it's because of the businesses that we're in or something, or the areas of the country. I don't know. I don't know if there's any polling data on such things, but you make a good argument as always. Let me ask you about this situation that is developing over the end of the week, where we're finding out that in the Build Back Better bill, Joe Manchin is insisting that they take out a certain part for climate, for the future of energy. And Joe Manchin, of course, is the senator from West Virginia. A lot of coal there. He himself apparently owns a coal mine or something. Anyway, he has personal financial ties, obviously, to the coal industry. Bernie Sanders writes an op-ed in the biggest West Virginia paper. So you're criticizing Sanders for doing that. You're criticizing Sanders for laying blame on the media for not talking more about what's in this bill. But what about just this important part of it being potentially gutted? You seem to not be too concerned. Do I have that right?
No. I'm very concerned. In fact, You
tweeted something that made me upset. I forget what it was. Maybe I have it wrong.
I think it might have been I was retweeting something that somebody else said about that this is a shame that this won't be, that it's a clean energy program, which is would play a huge role in reducing carbon emissions. And I was retweeting, I think it was Michael Grunwald, who was basically saying it's bad, but we shouldn't lose sleep over it because there's other ways that we can tackle climate change that'll be in this bill. Which I think he's probably right about. But I will say this, I think what Manchin is doing, I hope I'm allowed to say this on your show. He's a selfish. I'll clean it up. He's a selfish jerk. He's acting like a selfish jerk. This is something, and I was struck by something that he responded. Bernie Sanders wrote this op-ed that I thought was an incredibly stupid thing for him to do, and was sort of counterproductive. But Manchin's response was really interesting because he said, 52 senators agree with my position. He's basically counting all the Republicans, himself, and Kyrsten Sinema. And I'm like, what caucus are you a member of, Joe Manchin? Like, where is it the loyalty to his own caucus, to his fellow Democrats? The reality is that 48 out of 50 Democrats believe this is important. His president thinks it's important. And I don't remember. I must have missed this in November when I voted. I didn't see Joe Manchin's name on the ballot. But somehow Joe Manchin thinks he's president and he can decide what's in this bill. And, I find the whole thing just maddening because I get that you have complaints, but he's basically dictating what's in the bill. Tonight, there's a story that he wants the child tax credit, which could reduce child poverty by half. He wants it to be capped at $60,000 per family and wants there to be means testing for it. I mean, again, I just think it is maddening to see Joe Manchin basically decide that he gets to pick what's in the bill and what's not in the bill. Every other Democrat could do this because there's 50 of them. Every other Democrat could be the stick in the mud and say, I'm not going to do it because of this. But they're all sort of jumping on the bandwagon to help the team get, cross goal line. That makes 8 metaphors there, but you know what I mean. But Manchin's the one guy who's basically saying, no, I'm going to be the one who decides. And, look, Kyrsten Sinema is a narcissist and no one knows what the hell she's doing. But frankly, Manchin's just a jerk and he's acting like a jerk. And I mean, it's tiring. And I think, I criticized Bernie Sanders for writing. I didn't criticize him. I just said I don't know what the point of it was. Writing an op-ed in the West Virginia newspaper criticizing Joe Manchin is like a campaign contribution to Joe Manchin. What is he? That's not going to persuade Joe Manchin. It's just a waste of time, and I don't know what he thought he was going to accomplish with it. And what happens is that Manchin responds, with this aggrieved, ridiculous, whiny statement about how obnoxious for Bernie Sanders coming to his state and tell him what to do. It's just, the whole thing is just sort of pointless. And frankly, I may criticize Sanders, but he, believe me, is on the far better side of the Angels right now than Joe Manchin is.
Right. Well, yeah, that's for sure. Else I'd reach through the phone.
And even if you agree with Manchin, even if you think this is big, like, here's what gets me. He just has for months. Joe Manchin says we should pick what's in the bill based on what's needed in the country. Didn't want to give a top line number. Now it's like he pulls his number out of thin air, $1.5 trillion that has no relationship to what actually should be in the bill. And that's how now Democrats have to bend to him because he picks this number out of thin air. I mean, it's no way to legislate. You legislate by what actually needs to get what issues need to be addressed, not by some mythical number that Joe Manchin comes up with because he thinks it's more politically palatable in West Virginia. It's absurd.
Well, a few weeks ago, right here, you said that you still thought Joe Manchin would fall in line and it wouldn't be that much less than 3.5. Have you changed your tune at all?
Yes, I was wrong about the number. I thought it would be. I didn't think it would go this low. I am actually surprised. I am surprised that it's going low because Manchin said what he said. I think in January, February, he wanted $3 trillion for infrastructure. I assumed he was okay with the final number. I was surprised that he is making this kind of a complaint about this. It's such a stupid complaint. Now, I also said if the bill would get passed, I stick to that. I still think the bill is going to get passed, but it's going to be far less than it should be. And because Joe Manchin is Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema is Kirsten Sinema. So, yeah, I stick to one part of that prediction. The second part clearly was wrong.
What do you think about the complaint that Bernie Sanders made that the media hasn't talked enough about what's in the bill? They've only talked about the price tag, and even that hasn't been really clear and honest when they talk about it. It's been shorthanded.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm confused. What bill is Bernie Sanders referring to?
The Build Back Better bill?
There is no Build Back Better bill, right? They haven't actually written the bill yet. We don't even know what's in the bill. You have a proposal from Biden. You have a framework for a reconciliation agenda, but you don't have reconciliation a package, a budget reconciliation package. But as far as a final bill, we don't have one. I think that Democrats don't want the media to cover infighting among Democrats, then stop fighting. They don't want the press to cover whether it's $3.5 trillion or $1.5 trillion, then stop fighting over that number, because that's what's been happening for the past 2 months. So, I'm sympathetic to Sanders' argument because we in the media do a poor job of covering policy issues. But the fact is, Democrats have put themselves in this position by focusing more on the final cost of the bill than what's in the bill. And they have fed this narrative that media has been happy to pick up. So, if they could agree on something behind closed doors and present it as what they want to do rather than negotiating in public with all they've been doing, then we could talk about that. But whenever politicians complain the media's not covering the issue that they want correctly, I sort of roll my eyes at it because every politician says that. And in this case, it's really not accurate.
Well, you did write, I think, your most recent piece at your Substack, Truth and Consequences, truthandcons.substack.com. A piece called
truthandcons.substack.com.
Yes. Truthandcons.substack.com. What?
Or truthandcons.com. Either one will get you there.
Or just don't go to michaelcohen.com.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
The piece is titled, What Should Democrats Do? And you talk about the work of David Shor, who's a progressive pollster who's been pretty great. I read that long piece, deep dive by Ezra Klein about his work. And so I thought your piece was really interesting and important, too. What should Democrats do?
I go back to what I said at the beginning of the conversation. I just think that the focus should be, I think that we are in an area of intense polarization where policy outcomes, I don't know that they move that many voters. I don't know that messaging, which is Shor's big issue, moves that many voters. I think, some obviously, but I don't know that it's as decisive as he claims it is. I think that that's going to mobilize Democrats with what you need to do to really win in 2022 is to talk about Trump. One thing I would add that I didn't say, I said a little bit in the piece, but I think I think is a sort of a useful point here is that, there aren't that many competitive races for Democrats, or just in general in 2022. Maybe a half dozen Senate races are going to be competitive. In the House, it's probably going to be 30 or 40 that'll be competitive. Most of them will be so gerrymandered that there won't be much of a race.
Right.
And in a lot of those races, it may come down to, very narrow sets of issues. It may come down to if you're a California congressman, congresswoman, it may come down to what your position is on oil drilling on the California coast, because that seems to be a big issue out there. If you're in a high, relatively affluent district, it may come down to, were you able to get the cap on state and local taxes lifted so that people in those communities get a tax cut? If you're a New Jersey congressman, it may come down to get money for the Gateway Tunnel, which is a tunnel that connects New Jersey and New York and allows people their commutes to be shorter.
Yeah,
I think in a lot of ways those issues may be more decisive than something like your position on Medicare being able to negotiate drug pricing. I mean, I think they're all kind of matter in some ways, but I do think that a lot of politicians have figured out how to get elected in the last couple of years. Democratic politicians. I don't know that I'm not sure that what I hear from Shore is stuff that's necessarily that insightful. I mean, he says, for example, that you need, you should push policies that are popular and explain it in simple language. And as the kids say, duh. I mean, that's really what we know this already. I mean, I think that isn't really a revelatory statement. I mean, and he says that. I mean, he acknowledges it's not. I'm not flying to the moon on this comment. It's a relatively simple thing. But I think a lot of politicians do that already. So I'm not sure that his arguments are necessarily as momentous as maybe they're being made out to be. I mean, a lot of what he says I think makes sense, and I think he certainly has put his finger on some issues that I think are affecting Democrats. Maybe the focus on cultural issues over policy issues. But again, I don't know that that his solutions for that, particularly focusing on better messaging, really move the needle all that much.
Finally, it is autumn. You live in New York. Do you have strong feelings about this time of year?
I love this time of year.
Why?
It's just the weather's fantastic. It's beautiful. The leaves are changing. I was walking around today in a sweater, jeans, sneakers. I mean, I just felt it was perfect. It was a beautiful day today.
How long do you think this time of year is good, is pleasant? Is it a month? Is it 6 weeks before it gets?
I hope it goes until at least December, right? But here's my problem. Now that you mention this, my problem, Pete, is that I think it's 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know, maybe sooner. We're gonna fall back.
Oh, you got strong. You have a strong feeling about that.
I'll tell you right now. If Benito Mussolini rose from the grave and ran for president in 2024 on a platform of pledging to end daylight savings
single
forever,
issue,
Mussolini 2024 for me. Okay, because I friggin' hate that it gets dark at 4:30 in the winter. It makes me so angry. Anybody who likes it is a sociopath, in my opinion.
Well,
sorry.
So just to be clear, you hate daylight savings time more than you love your people.
My people. What
He was on board with a lot of bad things. So I just want to be clear. Also, and finally, one more.
That's actually not true. That is not true.
Oh, no, he was not an anti-Semite?
He did not turn over Italian Jews to the Nazis. In fact, he fought it for a long time.
Oh.
It didn't happen until after Mussolini was deposed. That's correct.
Wow, I didn't know this was going to be Mussolini defense hour.
I'm not. Look, he was a terrible fascist. I'm not defending.
Sounds like you are to me, based on daylight savings time alone. But finally, where are you on teaching an alternative view of the Holocaust? How do you feel? Where are you on that issue?
I guess there's probably an argument that was. I'm not even going to say it. I'm opposed to that particular argument.
Did that scare? I'm doing a survey, an informal survey of Jewish Americans. Like, that seemed to be really.
You know what? I listened to the audio.
Yeah, there's audio.
call.
Yeah,
It was like a cover your ass kind of moment. It was like a hapless school administrator saying we have to teach both sides, and using the Holocaust, which may be the worst. I mean, literally,
it would seem to be the worst choice.
It's like Holocaust, or slavery, right? Would be the two worst arguments that you could use as saying we need an alternative point of view.
Well,
right?
the other ones would be like simpler science, like teaching an alternative point of view of gravity or flat Earth or even
evolution.
Climate.
Right. I mean, which of course, there is some, it's not really taught in schools, but there was been pushes for that. I mean, look, it's just, this is a stupid Texas law that basically demands alternative viewpoints because the worst thing because apparently according to Texas Republicans, the worst thing that could possibly happen is the way people can be confronted with the fact that America might be a slightly racist society. So,
yeah,
God forbid that we have to, examine that possibility.
It's really, my friend Tim Wise wrote this. I'm sure others have made this observation, but this idea of they really are saying that they think their kids are too, often young and sensitive to deal with some of these difficult issues that they're being taught about in terms of the sins of our country. And it's like, I hate these same people points, but I'm going to make it. These same people are teaching their kids that if they don't do right by the Lord, they'll burn in hell at that young age.
You know what I want to do? Actually, Pete, I want to go back in time. I want to build a time machine, go back in time and buy all of the sweaters and T-shirts that I saw outside of Trump events that said, fuck your feelings.
Yeah.
Get those, travel back in time and give them to these people.
Yes.
That's what I'd like to do.
Yes, because that's what they're doing. They're talking about their feelings, and it's just they're talking about their kids' feelings.
I think people's feelings matter, actually.
Yes.
I think the black kid who in class who doesn't learn about who is watching as racism is whitewashed in America, I care about his feelings also. I really do.
Thank you very much for your time, as always, my friend. I appreciate you coming through.
As always, Pete, it was my pleasure.
Stand up. There he goes, Michael Cohen, bringing us some great, smart, thoughtful content, as he always does. Follow him at SpeechBoy71. Subscribe to his newsletter right now. Go to truthandcons.com. Of course, thank you to Maura Quint at Behind Your Back, and Fed Ingram at the American Federation of Teachers. Fed Ingram, 3 great guests and a news segment, all entirely produced by yours truly, all alone in my garden shed. Yes, indeed. I did it. We did it. Can't do it without your subscriptions. Sign up now. Go to standupwithpete.com to learn more. That's all I've got for you today. Looking forward to some other great shows this week. I'll be hosting a fundraiser for Why Hunger on Tuesday night in New York City. Looking forward to doing that at City Winery. If you want to go, email me for tickets, standupwithpete@gmail.com. And that is it. Jon Carroll is a singer. He's a songwriter. He's a Grammy Award winner, and he is a good friend of mine and our show and a huge supporter. He takes us out, as he does every day, takes Sin 2 with Stand Up. Take it away, Johnny.
Black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw the land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Where the money all went, it'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.